Hello everyone, peace be upon you all. Welcome to the first video in the series where we read Linguistics, an Introduction by William B. McGregor, published by Bloomsbury in 2024, I believe. This is the third edition. Yes, 2024. Let's see the contents. We have an introduction, first a preface, then an introduction, and some notes. Part 1, language, system and structure, sounds of language, phonetics and phonology, structure of words, morphology, lexicon, structure of sentences, syntax, meaning or semantics. Part 2, language in use. I'm thinking of stopping just reading part 1 because that's the most important part. But not gonna lose anything if I read the rest. I want to get a general idea about linguistics. Sociolinguistics, language in its social context, text and discourse, investigating language in use. Corpus linguistics. Part 3, language, a human phenomenon, language in its biological context. Psycholinguistics, language, the mind and the brain, language learning, language university. I merged uniformity and diversity into one word, university. Uniformity and diversity. Sign languages, writing, unity and diversity in language structure, language change, languages of the world. And it constitutes 441 pages. Let's see the preface. We can zoom now so that you could see properly. My intention in writing this book is to provide a basic introduction to modern linguistics that conveys an idea of the scope of the subject and a feeling for the excitement of doing linguistics. The excitement of finding out about language and languages, your own and others. I hope it will stimulate your understanding of the subject rather than encourage mere rote memorization of facts. I would also like to convey some appreciation of the reasons why linguists do what they do, and for the approaches and methods they adopt in studying languages. The third thing I would like to promote is the development of your powers of observation, as well as your critical and creative faculties. There are many excellent introductory textbooks on linguistics. Why another? My initial motivation lay mainly in dissatisfaction with certain aspects of the existing... I'll mute my phone so that it doesn't make any more noises. Where were we? My initial motivation lay mainly in dissatisfaction with certain aspects of the existing textbooks. None offered what I wished in terms of manner of presentation, pedagogic philosophy, the range and type of information presented, and theoretical stance. As a result of teaching an introductory course in linguistics in 2002, I was convinced of the need to write my own textbook to remedy these dissatisfactions. This resulted in the first edition, published in 2009, Errors in that edition, omission of important topics, and new developments in linguistics necessitated a second edition, published in 2015. 7 years on, further updating, revision, and extension necessitate a third edition. Acknowledgements, let's skip that. Then I believe we got notes. Yes, notes on the text. Organization and presentation. Manner of presentation. This book employs a clear physical layout of information, presenting the material in brief, clear sentences and sections. Each chapter begins with a brief abstract, a detailed table of contents, a list of the main goals of the chapter, and a checklist of the major terms and concepts introduced. I'm thinking of skipping the notes. Theoretical framework. Modern introductory textbooks tend either to acknowledge no particular theoretical framework purporting to be, or purporting, I don't know how to pronounce this, to be either atheoretical or Catholic in orientation, or to adopt, in other words, non-theoretical or universal in orientation, or to adopt the dominant theoretical framework in linguistics, generative grammar. Almost no introductory textbook presents linguistics from any of the many alternative perspectives. For these other perspectives, one must go to more advanced textbooks on specific topics. This book is intended to fill the lacuna and present beginning linguistics from an alternative perspective, specifically one in which both meaning and use play absolutely central roles. While I have my own minority theoretical perspective, I do not attempt to present or argue it here. Rather, I stand back from it. One moment. Checking the views. Currently, I've got 5 views, which is nice. But it says that my stream's current bitrate is lower than the recommended bitrate. It's fine. I'm not playing games or anything. I'm just reading. Let's continue. While I have my own minority theoretical perspective, I do not attempt to present or argue it here. Rather, I stand back from it and adopt a more general stance that includes many theories within the so-called functionalist, usage-based, and cognitivist paradigms. Needless to say, not all practitioners in these theories will agree with everything I say. There are other reasons why I believe it is unhelpful to adopt a too non-partisan approach in an introductory text. It is important for beginning students to get the feel for working and thinking within one approach. This has the advantage of permitting them to go more deeply into a topic and gain hands-on experience in doing things according to that approach. On the other hand, presentation of theoretical variety, perhaps chaos, tends to leave students bewildered on the one hand and on the other frustrated with the sketchy treatment of topics. there is also the danger that they acquire no usable skills. In my opinion, I find the presentation of theoretical variety is the best, and let the student decide which opinion he finds the most convincing, instead of presenting just one partisan view or a specific approach. Regardless, we will skip the structure of the book. We have already seen the contents guide for the student. We are free to do whatever we want. Thank you for your advice. This is the sound of the wheel, the mouse wheel. Introduction 1, Chapter 1, Introduction. Chapter contents: what is linguistics, fundamental concepts, design features of human language, outline of modern linguistics from a historical perspective. Then summing up, then it's about apparently 19 pages. Cool. What is linguistics? David Crystal's Dictionary of Linguistics and Phonetics begins the entry for linguistics with the words, the scientific study of language. He goes on to say that it is also called linguistic science and refers to it as an academic discipline. Ask any linguist what linguistics is, and you are likely to be given a similar answer, mentioning both its scientific character and its subject matter, language. Here I have an objection. When they say that something is scientific, they mean it uses the scientific method, which is essentially having a hypothesis, then testing the hypothesis, and seeing the result. So it's largely empirical. You have to observe, experiment, and experience. This dismisses the importance of theoretical work, the theoretical dimension of disciplines. In the Islamic world, most Islamic scholars would consider any academic discipline to be a science. It doesn't have to be empirical. It can be purely rational, like mathematics and philosophy, partly empirical, partly theoretical, and so on. Every rigorous study is a science. So it's a different conception of science than the usual one. So, saying that the science of language, the science of linguistics, is the scientific study of language is redundant. Rather, I would say that linguistics is simply the study of language. If you want to specify that it is empirical, I do not mind. It is the empirical study of language, to distinguish it from the philosophical study of language, the study of the foundations of language. We are rationalists, not empiricists. Empiricism is the idea that knowledge, true knowledge in science, comes from sense experience, from sight, hearing, and experimentation, observation, and so on, not rational reflection. Well, really, it's not that simple, but I object to just how to say it, reducing science to just the empirical sciences and dismissing rational sciences as not science. That's it. That's all what I want to say. I'm sorry for the interruption. Let's continue. Linguistics as a science. In other words, linguistics as an empirical discipline. What does it mean to say that linguistics is a science or a scientific field of study? To begin with, it says something about the approach taken to the subject matter. A scientific... Do you read analytic philosophy? I have not read analytic philosophy yet, but I do plan to. I want to learn linguistics first, then logic, then I will start with philosophy. But you have to get a good grasp of logic and linguistics first in order to be a good philosopher. These two sciences, which we would call in Arabic the tool sciences. How do we let's see. You should read philosophy of language, not linguistics. I will, but you need to have an idea on morphology, syntax and semantics and so on. Then you would understand philosophy of language deeper. You get what I mean? This is my opinion. I'm not. I'm open to changing my mind. علوم الآلة. Machine sciences. No! It's not machine sciences. Let's see in this website, almaini.com. Meaning, Almaini means it did not help. Tool sciences is the best I could say. The best I could say. I believe Paul Williams have, you know, blogging's theology? Blogging theology. Has published a video.
I'm from England.
where a couple of scholars have collected a variety of Ottoman scholarship. Yes, here it is, this video. Then they have a glossary here. Yes, all this effort just to get to this glossary. It's amazing. The American Society of Islamic Philosophy and Theology realizes that there are many barriers that can stand in the way of the researcher. Among these is the sophisticated technical terminology of the religious sciences of Islam, which can be difficult to acquire without traditional training. The technical meaning of a word within one of the sciences may be quite different from its literary meaning, or even from the meaning of the same word in a different science. Layered upon this is the issue of translation. Texts from Islamic philosophy and theology have been translated for centuries, but even good translators will differ on which English word to select. As part of its efforts to bridge the gap between researchers of various backgrounds in the field of Islamic philosophy and theology, to actively advance this area of study, the society is developing comparative glossaries, starting with an initial comparative logic glossary, which includes over 1,500. These facilities bridge on a grain between modernity and Islamic thought. Still did not get what I want. Let's see the curriculum. Perhaps we would. I want the term. How would they translate علوم الآلة, the tool sciences? The curriculum places a balanced emphasis on the tools of reasoning, tools of discovery and expression. Perhaps we could say it's the liberal arts. You know the liberal arts? It is the prerequisite sciences, the preliminary sciences. We could call them many names. Let's search. Ulum. Curriculum. I was introduced to the علوم الآلة in Tarim, Hadramaut. It was my second time studying there. Blah blah blah. The instrumental sciences. Yes, this is the word I was looking for. I'm sorry for taking so long to find it, but we have found it. The instrumental sciences. Logic and linguistics. These two sciences. You could add mathematics to it as well. are essential for understanding philosophy. In the Muslim curriculum, we study morphology first, grammar or syntax, logic, language theory, metaphor, dialectics, rhetorical semantics, figurative language, embellishments. Then, after all that, we would learn law or jurisprudential theory, creedal theology, and spiritual devotion, and so on. These are called the علوم المقاصد. Let's see how they translate it. Where is it? Let's see. علوم المقاصد. Maqsid is objective, so the sciences of objectives, these are the aims. I don't want to say objective sciences because it would be very ambiguous. What are the names? Target sciences, end sciences, intended sciences. So you got instrumental sciences and objective sciences. The instrumental sciences prepare you for the study of the objective sciences, which is philosophy, law, and spirituality in the Islamic curriculum, at least. I'm starting with linguistics because I want to understand deeply what words mean. And also, I want to use language properly. They say that linguistics just teaches you describe language, not prescribe what language is. But when you describe how the modern standard Arabic is a prescriptive language, it's not a descriptive language. It's not a language that is used natively. It is a language that is used to communicate between different peoples. It's like an international language or a multinational language. Otherwise, we would not be able to communicate as Arabs. And we could not communicate with our ancestors as well. Old Islamic sciences are in modern standard, not in classical Arabic. Let's say classical Arabic. The difference between classical Arabic and modern standard Arabic is negligible. Now let's continue. A scientific approach to the study of language involves a critical and inquiring attitude and refusal to accept uncritically, on faith or on authority, ideas or ways of thinking about language. Of course, it strives for objectivity, for developing hypotheses and putting them to the test by confronting them with observations. This means that linguistics is empirically grounded. It is based on actual language data, including observations of language used by speakers and their intuitions about their language. Linguistics is thus descriptive rather than prescriptive. Its primary goal is to describe languages as they are actually spoken, indicating what they are like and how they are used, rather than describe how they ought to be spoken. Many people are concerned about how their language ought to be spoken, as a glance in a newspaper is likely to reveal. People often comment on wrong grammar and pronunciation that people, usually others, use. At school, you may have learned that you should say, "That is the child whom the dog bit," and not, "That is the child who the dog bit." You should say whom, not who. But in modern English, which is an Indo-European language from England, most people say that the latter, that is the child who the dog bit, say the latter. They don't say whom the dog bit, they say who the dog bit. And few could use the school rule consistently and appropriately without consciously thinking about it. Linguistics is concerned with what people actually say, not with what they should say or think they should say. A scientific approach is not purely empirical, in the sense of merely collecting observations. It involves formulation and testing the hypotheses and generalizations, as well as theory development of ways of understanding language. This calls for rigorous and explicit formulation of ideas, as well as rigor in testing them. Linguistics, as a scientific endeavor, is as much a theoretical enterprise as an empirical one. Whatever observations one makes are useful and make sense only in relation to hypotheses and theories. As a science, linguistics is concerned with developing theories that account for and explain the phenomena of language and language use. Doing linguistics is concerned with theory development and testing, and with making generalizations about language, with uncovering regularities and repeated general characteristics. Exceptions play a crucial role, as in all sciences. They challenge the generalizations and force the investigator to rethink matters and refine or revise their ideas. We will see in this book places where exceptions loom large in scientific thinking about language and have resulted in significant new developments. An important skill to develop is the ability to recognize the significance of observed phenomena as exceptional or unexpected. Linguistics is a relatively new science. How? It is definitely a very old science. It is one of the oldest sciences, as old as philosophy, perhaps even older. No, I think it is as old as philosophy. You could say, what is the oldest science? I think natural sciences are the oldest sciences. people, when they lived together, they would learn about their environment and teach the next generations about their environment. This includes animals, plants, stars, and for navigation, some medical knowledge as well is inherited. These are the oldest sciences. When societies developed further, business became a science or a discipline. Mathematics, engineering, administration, then philosophy and religion. I consider religion to be two sciences gathered together, law and philosophy. Each religion is law plus philosophy, beliefs plus practices. So with the development of complex religions and development of philosophy and law also, there came the development of philosophy and logic and linguistics. Writing was taught, and lexicons were written in old Mesopotamia, ancient Mesopotamia, and so on. So I don't see how linguistics is a relatively new science. Anyway, and it is possible for beginners to observe new things about their language, even as well study the language as English, including things that challenge existing theories. You could say that modern linguistics, which uses modern tools, is relatively new, which is okay. But linguistics in general is not new. While reading this book, you should be constantly thinking about observing the language in use around you and linking your observations to the discussion and generalizations we make. Linguistics is often regarded as a humanities or arts subject, though in many ways it straddles the boundaries between humanities and sciences, with a foot in both camps. As they say here, humanities and sciences, they mean humanities with humanities, human sciences, or social sciences, or humanities are the disciplines or sciences that are not empirical. This is unlike natural sciences and social sciences and so on. So, it straddles the boundaries between theoretical sciences and empirical sciences. I would say that instead. With the foot in both camps. So language is half empirical, half theoretical. 50-50. Links to humanities include to language history and philosophy, as well as to ancient and modern language subjects taught in universities such as English, French, which is an Indo-European language found in France, German, an Indo-European language found in Germany, Ancient Greek, an Indo-European language found in Greece, Sanskrit, an Indo-European language found in India, and so on. Links to social sciences include to sociology, psychology, anthropology, and archaeology, but there are also links to the hard sciences such as biology, physiology, physics, and mathematics, most obviously in the production and perception of speech. Statistical methods have become increasingly important in many domains of linguistics. The human side of linguistics is as central as its scientific face. In other words, the theoretical side of linguistics is as central as its empirical face. Language is a human artifact, and many types of linguistic research involve interaction between the linguist and other human beings, speakers of languages. Their work thus not infrequently confronts linguists with human considerations such as provision of professional expertise or services and research ethics. The subject matter of linguistics. The subject matter of linguistics is, of course, language. And as a scientific subject, linguistics is in principle concerned with all aspects of language. But first, what is language? The term has many senses. Indeed, that is a very philosophical question. Sorry. What is language? I believe language is the medium with which we communicate our inner states, whether they are ideas or emotions, and so on. People talk of the language of bees, the language of the genetic code, the language of science, the language of mathematics, the language of flowers, the language of love, body language, computer language or languages, the English language, the American language, and so on. In this book, we use the term specifically in reference to natural human languages, such as French, Mandarin Chinese, which is a Sino-Tibetan language found in People's Republic of China, Basque, which is an isolate language found in Spain and France, and Hausa, which is an Afro-Asiatic language found in Nigeria. This is, of course, not a definition. It is a specification, so there are many mediums of communication. There are, as he said, there is language of bees, for example. Bees communicate through certain ways. So it would not count as a human language. Also, mathematics is a language to communicate certain ideas, but it is a formal language, not a natural one. It is a made-up language. That's why he's specifying natural human languages. To provide a definition now would be premature, as it would presuppose much of the content of this book. In one point in paragraph or section 1.3, we make a beginning by discussing some features that characterize human language and distinguish it from other communication systems, including those of other animals. We return to the question a number of times throughout the book, not always explicitly, so keep awake. By the time you have finished reading the book, you should have a clearer notion of what linguists mean by the term language and languages, and an appreciation of some of the difficulties in defining them. Let us now discuss some aspects of language that are interest to linguists. The best approach for our purposes is to outline the core branches of linguistics as a discipline, linking them to the chapters of this book. There are, of course, many other less central fields and subfields in linguistics. If you do a degree in linguistics, you are likely to study many of these branches, some of which will be covered in their own course. First, phonetics and phonology. They deal with the sounds of language. Phonetics is concerned with the ways speech sounds are produced, their nature, the physics of sound waves, and how they are perceived. Phonology is concerned with the ways sounds are patterned in a language, with those characteristics that are significant in the sound system of the language. These two branches are dealt with in Chapter 2. Morphology deals with the way the words of a language are structured, how they are made up of smaller meaningful parts. For example, reads is made up of read and the ending s, which tells you that the reading is being done by one person, who is not the speaker or hearer, either at the present time or generally. Wow. All of that by just adding an S. Morphology is treated in Chapter 3 and 4. Syntax is concerned with the ways words go together to form sentences and how the words are related to one another. For instance, the boy reads comics consists of a subject or doer of the action, the boy. A verb representing an event, reads, and an object or patient of the action, comics. Sometimes words go together to make up constructions of intermediate size, larger than words but smaller than sentences. An example is the boy in our previous sentence. Syntax is the topic of Chapter 5. Syntax and morphology together make up the core of grammar. Semantics and pragmatics deal with meaning. Semantics is concerned with the aspects of meaning that are encoded by words and grammar. Pragmatics handles the aspects of meaning of an utterance that come from its use in a particular context. The sentence, "come again," is made up of two words, each of which has a meaning. Come has a meaning and again has a meaning, as does the entire sentence. Come again together has a third meaning. These matters are the concern of semantics, but you can use this sentence in different circumstances and in different ways to mean different things. If said when farewelling a visitor, it could be interpreted as an invitation to return at a later time. Come again, like this. In other contexts, it could be interpreted as an expression of disbelief, or a request that the hearer repeat what they have just said. Such interpretations are the concern of pragmatics. Chapter 6 treats semantics and pragmatics. Sociolinguistics is concerned with language in its social context, with the relations between language and society. It explores the variation in languages associated with social phenomena, such as the social group to which speakers and/or hearers belong. For instance, differences in speech go according to class in Western societies. Other topics of interest. Why Western societies? Just say in societies. What do you mean Western societies? Do you think that there are no differences in speech according to class in Eastern societies? This is very strange choice of words. I think he wants to say in developed societies. That would be a better word. Other topics of interest in sociolinguistics are multilingualism, language choice, what motivates the choice of language in multilingual settings, attitudes to languages and language variation, and standard and non-standard varieties of a language. Anthropological linguistics has basically the same range of concerns as sociolinguistics, but takes inspiration more from anthropology than sociology and usually deals with small-scale non-Western cultures. Again, what do you mean non-Western? Okay, so sociolinguistics, takes inspiration from sociology and studies Western societies. Anthropological linguistics study small-scale non-Western cultures. Then there is a question: who studies big-scale non-Western cultures? Or what studies big-scale non-Western cultures, such as China or India? Bizarre. It's just strange choice of words. Regardless, sociolinguistics is dealt with mainly in Chapter 7. Discourse analysis examines stretches of language, both spoken and written, larger than the sentence. It attempts to find regularities in the formation of these stretches and correlations with grammatical, phonological, lexical and semantic phenomena. Among the issues that have attracted interest are how sentences are connected, how texts are made coherent, and the use of words like well, like, huh, and so on. Filler words. Conversation analysis focuses attention on the properties of everyday conversation, including turn-taking, how conversation partners organize and the exchange of speaker and hearer roles. Negotiation of interactive expectations and goals, use of discourse markers, words like well, however, nevertheless, etc., and conversational coherence. Discourse analysis is the topic of Chapter 8. Corpus linguistics is an increasingly popular field of linguistics that analyzes language in use by applying quantitative and qualitative empirical methods to corpora or collections, usually stored in electronic format, of naturally occurring spoken and written texts. Corpus linguistics methods have been applied to virtually every subject domain of linguistics. Chapter 9 presents some of the basic notions and methods of corpus linguistics. I have a question. What's the difference between discourse analysis and corpus linguistics? I don't know. Evolutionary linguistics is concerned with the origins of language and with how we came to speak. A fundamental question is, why are we the only species with language? Is language a part of our genetic makeup as human beings, or does biology merely permit us to speak? Some ideas about language origins and evolution are discussed in Chapter 10, which also sets human language in its biological context. Psycholinguistics and neurolinguistics are concerned with the processes involved in language production. For example, speaking and writing and comprehension, listening and reading. Psycholinguistics investigates the mental processes. Underline 1 second. Okay, let's continue. Psycholinguistics investigates the mental processes underlying language processing, while neurolinguistics is biologically oriented, focusing on the brain's language processing activities. Psycholinguistics tends to adopt methods of psychology, neurolinguistics, medical methods, and technology. These topics are treated in Chapter 11. Cool. Sign language learning is the field of linguistics that investigates processes of attaining comprehension and production of a language. It is concerned with both how children learn their first language, native language or mother tongue, and how adults learn second or later languages. Chapter 12 discusses processes of language learning. Sign language linguistics studies languages that employ the medium of non-vocal bodily gestures, mainly of the hands and face, and include the languages of deaf communities. These are fully fledged languages with their own distinctive grammars and lexicons, different from the grammars and lexicons of the surrounding spoken languages. Chapter 13 discusses some of the main characteristics of sign languages. It also deals with the gestures that accompany speech. Written language linguistics, not a standard term, studies the characteristics of language in another non-vocal medium, namely writing. Writing in electronic media of various sorts has attracted a considerable amount of attention in recent years, not only among linguists, but also the general public. In Chapter 14, we discuss some of the main linguistic features of writing, and how and why written varieties of a language differ from spoken varieties in both structure and use. Typology and universals are concerned with the range and limitations on variation among languages. Typology seeks to discover and account for the variation by classifying languages into types according to some structural feature, for instance, the order of subject, verb, and object, and classifying linguistic structures according to their similarities and differences. For example, whether possession is expressed by a have verb or a verb be at. In Arabic, what do we say in Arabic? أنا عندي ألم. At me pen. At me pen. We also say أنا معي ألم. I with me pen. Or أنا أملك ألم. أنا أملك قلما. I own a pen. I own pen. Anyway, the study of language universals is concerned with identifying features common to all of the world's languages. These matters are the concern of chapter 15. I find this chapter to be very interesting. Historical linguistics studies how languages change over time. Languages never remain static for long. Indeed, they change rapidly. Historical linguistics has methods for working out what changes are likely to have happened over time to a language or group of languages. It is also concerned with establishing genetic relations among languages, that is, with showing that certain languages are related by having evolved from the same ancestral language. The comparative method is a technique devised for this purpose. Chapter 16 deals with historical linguistics. Diversity linguistics is concerned with documenting the linguistic diversity of the world in terms of both structural diversity, the concern of linguistic typology, and genetic diversity, the concern of historical linguistics. It is also concerned with other dimensions of variation in language. Chapter 17 discusses this topic and overviews some of the main language families of the world. Fundamental concepts. The sign. One of the most important concepts of modern linguistics is the notion of the sign, a fundamental unit used in the representation and conveyance of information. The sign involves a pairing of form, roughly something perceivable, and the meaning, a mental notion or idea. Some example of written or graphic signs are the following: meaning female, and so and so meaning male, and so meaning euro, and so meaning and so meaning free. A gesture such as the thumbs up is also a sign, since it pairs the hand shape with a meaning like okay, right, go ahead, and so on. Signs can also involve sound forms that can be heard rather than seen, as in the case of spoken words, for example, the spoken words 10 and tree. The fundamental properties of the sign are illustrated in figure 1.1, which is based on Ferdinand de Saussure's famous diagram of the word as a linguistic sign, exemplified by the English word tree. Ferdinand lived between 1857 and 1913. So you have a concept and a sound image. For example, we have a tree and the concept of a tall woody plant with trunk and branches, or tree with the concept of tree, this image. Saussure likened the sign to a coin. Just as both faces are essential for a coin to count as an object that can be used in economic transactions, so also are form and meaning both essential to the sign as a unit in information exchange. Without a meaning, we have no sign. The letter H of the Latin alphabet has no meaning in written English words, and so is not a sign. It can no more be used in information conveyance than the image of a head on a coin can be used in a shop. Can the letter H ever be a sign? If so, when? If it has a meaning, if it's, for example, a shorthand for or an abbreviation for something. Nor is a disembodied meaning or a concept without a form a sign. It must be the combination of form and sign. If it's without meaning, just a form, it's not a sign. If it's just a meaning without a form, it's an idea, not a sign. Relations between form and meaning in the sign. Depending on how the form and meaning of a sign are related, we can talk of iconic signs and symbolic signs. A third type, indexical signs, is identified and discussed in section 10.1, chapter 10, section 1. Iconic signs. An iconic sign or icon is a sign that has a form resembling its meaning in some way. The form shows some characteristics of the corresponding concept. Figure 1.2 gives some examples. Okay. Notice that the form of an icon is never an exact representation of the meaning. It shows salient features in stylized ways, ignoring other features. Different forms can iconically represent the same concept by selecting different features of the concept. The first two icons, A and B, represent the same concept, telephone, although B depicts only a single aspect of the concept, the receiver. Many manual gestures are iconic. I believe manual gestures are the ones by the hand. Holding up a hand with the digits spread out to represent the number 5 is iconic. Cool. Symbolic signs. A symbolic sign or a symbol is a sign that is a sign the form and meaning of which are related purely by convention, by established and acquired through repeated instances of use in communication. The form bears no obvious similarity to the meaning. Okay, let's read it again, sorry. Symbol is a sign, the form and meaning of which are related purely by convention, being established and acquired through repeated instances of use in communication. The form bears no obvious similarity to the meaning. Figure 1.3 gives some examples. Okay. The line between symbols and icons is not clear-cut, and they are not really different types of sign. What is a symbol to one person might be an icon to another. To someone who knows only mobile phones, A and B in figure 1.2 might appear completely arbitrary and inexplicable as signs for phones generally, established purely by convention. Similarly, the save icon uses an old disk that is not used anymore, and many young people have no idea that this is an icon. Rather, they now treat it as a symbol. Iconic signs always involve some degree of conventionality and or arbitrariness in the form meaning link. They are not connected by necessity and could be otherwise. Think of the equal sign, which has an obvious iconic basis in the identity of length of the lines, and was first used by the English mathematician Robert Drackard, who lived from 1510 to 1558. With this in mind, its orientation on the page is arbitrary. It could be vertical or horizontal. Why should it be horizontal? There is no necessary link between the horizontal aspect of the sign with the meaning. And some mathematicians of Record's time used the equally iconic sign, this sign, now used to iconically represent parallel lines. Language as a sign system. The examples discussed in the previous sections illustrate non-linguistic signs. What's the difference between linguistic and non-linguistic signs? Anyway, it was one of Saussure's important insights that human languages are systems of signs. No. This has been known since very long ago. Arabic linguistics. There is the indicator and the indicated, and the indicated is immaterial and the indicator is material, but the indicator and indicated are both linked in a way that is complex. What I want to say that it is compact. It is compound. A word is compound. It is a symbol of form and meaning, as so said. But they just use different terms, technical terms. And they know that it is arbitrary, that it could be otherwise. There is no necessary relationship. It's by convention. It's not something new that Saussure discovered on his for the first time. Anyway, this means on the one hand that human languages are made up of signs, and on the other that these signs interrelate and form a system. They do not exist in isolation from one another. Nature of signs in human language. Symbolic signs in language. We have already said that the word tree is a sign, being constituted in speech by a phonetic sound form, and in writing by an orthographic or written form, in association with a meaning. The same goes for the word tree in many other languages. Coca in Aymara, which is an Aymaran language found in Peru. Ikimuti in Bemba, which is a Niger-Congo language found in Zambia. And Mestsis in Blackfoot, which is an Algonquian language found in Canada and the USA. Tro or tre in Danish, which is an Indo-European language found in Denmark. Tree in English. Grilli in Gunyandi, which is a Bunuban language found in Australia. Fa in Hungarian, which is an Uralic language found in Hungary. Arbor in Latin, which is an Indo-European language found in Italy. Us in Papago, which is an Uto-Aztecan language found in the USA. Lao in Samoan, which is an Austronesian language found in Samau. And G in Shua, which is a Hokwadi language found in Botswana. Clearly, these word signs are symbolic. There is no natural connection between the sound or orthographic forms and the meaning. Each form is as good as another for expressing the meaning tree. None is in any way suggestive of the meaning. If you did not know the language, you would not be able to guess the meaning if you heard the form. And there is little similarity among the various forms, except in the case of the two closely related languages, Danish and English. Most words in human languages are symbols. It is often said that linguistic signs are typically arbitrary. This is a potentially misleading statement. It does not mean that anything goes, that a speaker is free to choose whatever form or meaning they like to associate together in a sign. Humpty Dumpty may have believed that he could. When I use a word, Humpty Dumpty said in a rather scornful tone, It means just what I chose it to mean, neither more nor less. Clearly, communication would be impossible with such anarchy. Arbitrariness refers to the non-necessary relation between the form and the meaning of a sign. Iconic signs in language. There are exceptions. Some words are iconic. Some words are iconic. The phonetic forms of words like woof woof, cock-a-doodle-doo, ba-ba, meow, ding-dong, pop and ping are quite suggestive of the meanings, which are sounds, the sound made by dogs, cockerels, sheep, and so on. The spoken form is somewhat similar to the sound it represents. Such words are onomatopoeic. The written forms of these words, however, do not resemble the sounds made by the animals or things. Just the sound form is iconic. Many languages have onomatopoeic words for the characteristic calls of animals. These are not normally exactly the same in different languages. Remember that icons also involve conventional associations of form and meaning, though they are often similar. The noise made by a cat is meow. There are different spellings. In English, meow in Hungarian, pronounced almost exactly as in English. Mia in Icelandic, which is a Indo-European language found in Iceland. Meow in Japanese, which is just Japanese, found in Japan. Miuk in Bulu, which is a Niger-Congo language found in Cameroon. Meow in Hindi, which is an Indo-European language found in India. Mew Mew in Bengali, which is an Indo-European language found in Bangladesh. Meow in Greek, which is an Indo-European language found in Greece. Meow in Mandarin Chinese, and Nyong in Indonesian, which is an Austronesian language found in Indonesia. No one would mistake these for the vocalizations of a dog or horse, but we sometimes find no phonetic similarity in different onomatopoeic representations of the vocalizations of particular animals. Both woof woof and bow wow are onomatopoeic of the noise of a dog. These represent different sounds made by the same animal. Young children often call a dog a bow wow, a boo boo, boo boo, and a sheep a ba ba, ba ba. In fact, in many languages we find words for at least a few animals, especially birds, that are identical with or similar to an onomatopoeic sign for their characteristic call. In Gunyandi, minyawu is the word for cat. The word for peewee, peewit, mudlark is dia. For gala is gilini. And for brolga, gurarla. gurarga, gurarga. There are very similar representations of the characteristic vocalizations of these animals in the language. For example, dia dia repeated 2 to 4 or 5 times for the peewee and uttered with a high pitch, which anyone who has heard the call will immediately recognize to be onomatopoeic. These terms for animals are not onomatopoeic, but they do show iconic components. They depict the characteristic sound of the animals. A more complex example of iconicity in words is drawing out the pronunciation of the word long to long, or big to big. The increased length of the word represents increased size. That the thing is very long or big. Other languages allow similar things. In Gunyandi, you can lengthen Gira Bingari long into Gira Bingari to mean very long, and Nyamani big to Nyamani very big. It is not the phonetic form of the words long or Gira Bingari that iconically represent the meaning long. That meaning is associated with the word forms long and Gira Bingari themselves. The iconicity comes in at a different level. The phonetic difference between long and long represents the meaning difference between long and very long. Here we have a sign with the form extra length word form and intensifying meaning very word meaning. This is why teeny can be lengthened to teeny in English, and jinginya small to jinginya really small in Gunyandi. The lengthened words obviously do not convey a sense of larger in size. Relations between linguistic signs. This brings us to the second aspect of language as a sign system, the notion of system, the notion that the signs of any human language interrelate to form a coherent whole. This happens on two dimensions, syntagmatic and paradigmatic. Syntagmatic. In every speech and writing, linguistic signs occur in combination with other signs. Human beings often put together a number of signs to convey complex meanings. They are not restricted to producing single sign utterances like 1-year-old children and many animals. In speech, word signs follow one another in order, even though the boundaries between them are often fuzzy. In writing, they follow one another in a conventional spatial sequence. In the writing traditions of Europe, from left to right, top to bottom. I have lost focus. Let me read it again very quickly. Oh, okay. So I could convey one meaning using many forms, such as I am hungry. I have used 3 words. to convey that I am hungry, which is a single meaning. An animal could just use a single form, like meow, to express their hunger. We could convey even more complex meanings when we use longer sentences to convey a certain meaning. We put together different meanings to form a bigger meaning, a complex meaning. This is the syntagmatic dimension. As far as I understand. This dimension is called syntagmatic. The signs that go together to make up an utterance are not put together randomly, but are related in specific ways to one another. In I will never forget that terrible day, the order of signs plays an important function. The fact that I precedes will tells us that the utterance is a statement. If these two words had occurred in the reverse order, we would have a question. Will I never forget that terrible day? Relations between signs that appear in the presence of one another are syntagmatic relations. For example, terrible describes day and is dependent on it. You can omit it, but you can't omit the following word day. We can't just say, I will never forget that terrible. Terrible what? The words never and forget are also syntagmatically related, but the relation is different. Never does not describe forget in the way terrible indicates the quality of the day in question. The term syntagm refers to any coherent grouping of signs that form a unit together. Thus, I will never forget that terrible day is a syntagm. So also is that terrible day. These three words belong together and function as a single unit. They cannot be split up or separated in a way that never forget that does not. Paradigmatic. Not only do speakers put signs together in strings, but they choose the signs that go in the sequence from a range of possible alternative signs that could have been used instead. This gives us the paradigmatic dimension, the notion that each sign invokes a contrast with other signs that might have been used instead. Signs so related are in a paradigmatic relation. Signs in paradigmatic relation form a paradigm. The paradigmatic dimension is important because the set of signs in paradigmatic relation with a particular sign in a syntagm is restricted. In our example sentence, I will never forget that terrible day, I contrasts with you, he, she, my brother, John, John's older brother, and many other signs, simple and complex. But it does not contrast with and cannot be replaced by hit. You can say, Hit will never forget that day, and will not forget that terrible day, and so on. Not, up, won't, and so on. The existence of such restrictions is evidence that the signs in the syntagm are genuinely syntagmatically related, that there is structure on the syntagmatic dimension, and that the signs are not arbitrarily placed in sequence one after the other. If we examine these signs in paradigmatic alteration with I in our example sentence, it is clear that they relate in different ways to one another. I, you, he, and she are more closely related to one another than Annie is to John or John's older brother. Imagine a game in which I say a word and you respond with as many words as come to mind in 30 seconds. Most likely, if I say I, you would respond with you, he, she, we responses. John's older brother, and it would be less likely. If I were to say brother, the chances are that you would respond with words like sister, father, mother, son sooner than we, you, atom, or star. These signs in the groups of likely responses have similar meanings. For brother and sister, the difference is in terms of the sex of the relative. For brother and father, it is in terms of the genetic relation. These dimensions of contrast recur throughout the paradigm of kin terms in English. The meaning of a sign in a language is dependent in part on the other signs in close paradigmatic relationship with it. In English, we means me and someone else. It contrasts with I in terms of the number of persons specified. Gunbainger Pama-Nyungan is a Pama-Nyungan language in Australia, has 4 words for we. Wow. Nigali, Nigia, Nigali Gai, and Nigia Gai, as well as Nigaya, I. The first 2 of these Nigali and Nigia are Nigali and Nigia are used if the group includes the hearer. The second pair, Nigali Gai and Nigia Gai, if it does not. The first word of each pair is used if there are just 2 persons in the we group. The second if there are more. The Gumbainiger word Nigali does not mean the same thing as English we, partly because of the other words in paradigmatic contrast to it. The meaning of a stretch of language depends both on the signs present in it and on the signs absent from it. The same goes for its grammatical structure. The 2 dimensions, paradigmatic and syntagmatic, are important both to meaning and to form. Just as the meaning and form of a sign are inseparable, so also are the paradigmatic and syntagmatic dimensions. Mediums of language. The auditory vocal medium is the primary medium for a language. Most natural human languages are usually conveyed by speech. Exceptional are the sign languages of the deaf, which use the visual gestural medium of the eyes, hands, face, and body. As will be shown in chapter 13, these are full human languages satisfying Hockett's design features, and are structurally distinct from the spoken languages surrounding them. This book is primarily about spoken language, and unless otherwise stated, it should be assumed that we are talking specifically about spoken language. Another medium of language is writing. Writing is derivative from speech and secondary to it. It is a system of representing the words of a language by visual forms and their combinations. In this regard, writing is distinct from other systems of visual representation such as paintings, murals, carvings, notches on sticks, and so on, which do not represent the words of a language. For want of a better technical term, we will call this medium the visual inscribed medium. I have lost concentration. I am sorry. Let me repeat this quickly. This is a system for Okay. It is important to note, however, that writing is not just speech converted into visual inscribed medium. Although writing represents the spoken language, there are real differences in written and spoken varieties of one and the same language, and some of which result from the different natures of the mediums. Modern technologies are bringing writing closer in some ways to speech, for example, in instant messaging. Linguists are generally more interested or claim to be more interested in speech than in writing, although both are appropriate topics for linguists to study. We discussed writing in chapter 14. It is important not to confuse speech and writing. Beginning students frequently make this mistake and are apt to be misled by features of the way their language is written. For instance, many beginners believe that English has 5 vowels because 5 vowel letters are used in writing the language: A, E, I, O, and U. In fact, as we will see in chapter 2, most dialects of English have more than a dozen vowels, as well as a number of diphthongs, double vowel sounds, such as in the pronunciation of the word pie. The term letter should be reserved for talking about writing. It is misleading to speak of the letters of spoken language. Instead, the term phone or sound should be used. Section 3. Design features of human language. Many animals use signs to communicate with other members of their species. Some species of bees, for instance, use dances to indicate the location of a source of nectar. Human beings, however, are obsessed with signs and can't help seeing them everywhere. Clothing is a sign system, so also are the Hindu-Arabic numerals, the Chinese numerals, and the traffic lights. Human language occupies a privileged place among sign systems. It is a particularly elaborate sign system that has properties not manifested or weakly manifested in other sign systems. What might these features be? The American linguist Charles Hockett, who lived between 1916 and 2000, proposed a set of design features of human language, a set of features useful for understanding the differences between human languages and the communication systems of other animals. This set has undergone modifications and additions since it was proposed by Hockett in 1960. Below we discuss 6 of the most important features. Some of these will be taken up again in our discussion of animal communication in Chapter 10, Sign Languages in Chapter 13, and Writing in Chapter 14. First, arbitrariness. We have already mentioned arbitrariness as a property of word signs in human languages, and explained that it is to be understood in the sense that the form and meaning of a word sign are not connected by necessity. Arbitrariness is a matter of degree, and ranges from highly iconic and motivated, though never bereft of some conventionalization, to purely symbolic. In the animal world, too, most signs show some degree of conventionalization. In some cases, these signs are quite iconic. The dance of some bee species iconically represent the direction to a nectar source by one of the axes of their figure 8 dance. But the forms for this meaning could easily have been otherwise, and do in fact differ among bee types. Mating and territorial calls and dances of animals are generally conventionalized. Displacement. Secondly, displacement. People often talk about things that are not present. They speak about events and things from distant times and places, about things that happened long ago in faraway places. Indeed, these may be entirely imaginary, like unicorns and time travel. This book would not have been possible otherwise. If language could only be used to describe what is actually physically present in the writer's environment, this is called displacement. Animal communication systems sometimes allow limited displacement for signaling things that aren't physically present and perceivable. The dances of bees can signal presence of nectar at a distance of some kilometers from the hive. Some studies have shown that chimpanzees can sign about items that are not visible. In one study, it was shown that the chimpanzee pansy, using a system of signs on a monitor, could call attention to items of food it had observed hidden by a trainer, sometimes days previously. But the displacement revealed in these examples is limited. What is communicated about is something that is relevant to the present circumstances. Thus, the invisible food pansy indicated seems to have always been an item of food recently hidden and not yet retrieved. The communication was concerned with its retrieval. Displacement is a matter of degree rather than an all-or-nothing thing. Displacement is not always a good thing to have in a sign system. The system of alarm calls of vervet monkeys would be compromised. If it permitted displacement, it would then no longer be a science of alarm calls, but of calls, sometimes used as alarms, calling for immediate evasive action, and sometimes referring to the presence of a predator from a different occasion. Similarly, the system of sirens used on emergency vehicles would be of little use if it allowed displacement. Cultural transmission. Let's see, did I complete 2 hours yet or not? I did. Okay, let's stop here. Okay guys, thank you for watching and goodbye.